I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice or push back my chair or say a single word that anyone at that table could use against me later. I just watched, and I remembered everything. That is what 40 years of nursing will do to you. You learn to keep your face still when your chest is on fire. My daughter's name is Lily. She was 31 years old the night I am going to tell you about. She had her father's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness, and a laugh that used to fill up whatever room she walked into. I say used to because by the time of that dinner, she had stopped laughing the way she used to. I had noticed. I noticed the way you notice a plant that is not quite dying, but is no longer reaching toward the light. Her husband's name is Conrad. He was 34, broad shoulders, good haircut, the kind of handshake that men practice. He worked in commercial real estate in Atlanta, and he liked for people to know it. He drove a truck that cost more than my first house. He called me ma'am in a way that was technically polite and actually condescending, and the first time he did it, I thought I was being too sensitive. By the 6th or 7th time, I knew I wasn't. They'd been married 2 years when that dinner happened. But I need to back up further than that. I first started worrying about Lily about 8 months after the wedding. Small things. She stopped calling me on her lunch break the way she always had. I told myself she was busy, that she was building a new life, that I needed to let her go. I believed that for about 3 weeks, and then I called her on a Tuesday afternoon, and she answered on the first ring and said, in a voice that was careful in a way it had never been careful with me, "Mum, I can't really talk right now." I could hear him in the background. I recognized the silence that a person makes when they are listening to a phone call they are not supposed to be a part of. Then the things that followed. Lily had always been independent. She had put herself through nursing school, the same as me. She had her own savings account, her own opinions, her own friends from college she saw twice a year in Savannah for a long weekend that she used to call her reset. The year after she married Conrad, the Savannah trip didn't happen. Her friend Petra called me. Actually called me on my cell phone because she didn't know what else to do. She said, "Miss Evelyn, I don't want to cause trouble, but Lily cancelled on us for the 3rd time, and I just want to make sure she's okay." I told Petra I would look into it. Petra said, "She told us Conrad doesn't like her travelling without him. She said it the way you say something you have been turning over in your mind for a long time and finally decided someone else needed to hear." I sat with that for a week before I said anything to Lily. When I finally did, she told me Petra was exaggerating. She told me she just hadn't felt up to travelling. She said it in a tone that closed the door, and I let it close because she was my daughter and not my patient, and I did not yet understand what I was dealing with. The second thing I noticed was the way she talked about money. Lily had always been sensible with money. Grew up watching me work double shifts and stretch a grocery budget, and she learned the value of $1 the way children learn it when they have to. But now she would mention things, small things, a haircut, lunch with a coworker, and she would say, "I have to check," or "Conrad handles all of that." Once I asked her about her retirement account, a specific question about whether she was still contributing the full match, and she went quiet for a moment, and then said she would have to ask Conrad. That was when I started keeping a mental file. I did not say anything dramatic. I did not confront anyone. I am 64 years old, and I have spent my career in an ICU, and I have learned that the worst thing you can do when you suspect something is act before you have the full picture. So I watched, and I listened, and I started asking Lily if I could come visit more often. Not staying, just visiting. Lunch. A walk. I wanted eyes on her regularly, and I wanted her to know, even if she didn't fully know she knew, that I was there. It was during one of those visits that I met Conrad's sister for the first time. Her name is Pauline. She lived about 40 minutes north of them, in Marietta, and she came over for Sunday dinner that day uninvited, which I gathered was normal. She walked in while Lily was still cooking and dropped her bag on the counter and said, Something smells off. What did you put in the sauce? And Lily said, without missing a beat, without looking up, I can adjust it. Not there's nothing wrong with it, nor what do you mean, it smells fine. Just immediately, I can adjust it. Pauline looked at me and smiled. The smile was for me, not for Lily. It was the smile of someone who is used to being the authority in a room. I smiled back. I filed it away. After dinner that day, Conrad and Lily had a brief exchange about the dishwasher, about how Lily loaded it, specifically, which apparently was not the way Conrad preferred. And he said, in front of me, in front of Pauline, in a tone that was not shouting, but was something I can only describe as deliberate, "You've been doing it wrong for 2 years. I've told you." Lily nodded. She said, "You're right, I'm sorry." And she reloaded 3 dishes while the rest of us stood there. Pauline said, "She means well." Like Lily wasn't in the room. Like Lily was a child or a pet. I drove home that night and sat in my driveway for 10 minutes before I went inside. I needed to get my face right before I walked through my own door. Lily's birthday is in March. She turned 32 this past year. Conrad told her he was taking her to Bones, the steakhouse on Piedmont Road, and that it would be a family dinner. He invited Pauline. He did not ask Lily who she wanted there. He told me the time and the location via a text message, cordial and brief, the way you tell a co-worker about a meeting. I came. Of course I came. My son-in-law's mother came too, a woman named Dolores. No, wait, her name was Georgette. Georgette was pleasant and loud and talked mostly about her garden and her knee replacement, and I found her easy enough to tolerate. Pauline arrived after us, 15 minutes late, with a bosh of wine she handed to the waiter before even sitting down, and a comment about the parking that no one responded to. Lily looked beautiful. She was wearing a blue wrap dress I had never seen before, and her hair was down, and she was smiling, and for a few minutes it felt like an ordinary birthday dinner for my daughter, and I let myself be glad. Then the menus came. Lily was looking at hers, reading through it quietly, and Conrad leaned over and said, not loudly, but clearly enough, "I'll order for you. You always take too long and you never end up eating what you actually want anyway." He didn't look up from his own menu when he said it. It was a statement the way a fact is a statement. "The sky is blue. I'll order for you." Lily put her menu down. She put it down like she was setting down something heavy that she'd been carrying for a long time. I looked at her. She was looking at the tablecloth. There was a moment, just a flicker, the way a candle moves in a draught, where something crossed her face, something that looked like a woman who remembered who she used to be. Then it was gone. Pauline laughed. It was a small laugh through her nose, and she said, "She doesn't mind. She tells me herself she can never make up her mind in restaurants." She said it to Georgette, not to me. She was creating a version of Lily for the table, and Lily was sitting right there. I set my own menu down. I picked up my water glass. I took 1 sip, and I decided. I did not say anything at dinner. I want to be clear about that. I did not make a scene. I did not cause a confrontation. I did not give Conrad any warning of what was coming. Because that is not how I was trained, and it is not how I operate. What I did was watch Lily for the rest of that meal with the part of my brain that I use at work. The part that catalogues, that times intervals, that notices what other people dismiss as nothing. I noticed that she did not speak unless someone addressed her directly. I noticed that she glanced at Conrad before answering my questions about her job. I noticed that when Pauline made a comment about Lily's dress, "That colour washes you out a little. I've always thought jewel tones were better on you." Lily said, "You might be right." I noticed that she ate what he ordered for her and did not send it back, even though I know my daughter well enough to know she does not like pink in her steak. I noticed all of it. I filed all of it. When we said goodbye in the parking lot and Conrad went to get the car and Pauline was talking to Georgette, I held Lily for an extra second in the hug. I felt her exhale, The kind of exhale that happens when you have been holding your breath for a long time and someone you trust is holding you, and you just let go for 1 second before you have to put it all back. I drove home and I called my friend Constance, who has been a family law attorney in Fulton County for 23 years. I didn't ask her for legal advice that night. I just told her what I'd seen. She listened without interrupting, which is a skill not enough people have, and when I finished, she said, "Evelyn, you know what this is." I said, "I know what this is." She said, "What do you need from me?" I said, "Not yet, but soon." The clearer picture came 6 weeks later. Lily called me on a Wednesday morning, which was unusual. She worked Wednesdays. It was 8:15 and I was getting ready for my own shift. And she said, "Mom, I fell." I said, "Where are you hurt?" She said her left forearm, that she had tripped on the stairs. I said, "Where are you right now?" She said she was at home, that Conrad had already left for work. I said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. She met me at the door in a long-sleeved cardigan. In March, in Atlanta, I did not ask her to roll up her sleeve. "I'm a nurse." I said, "Let me take a look." She hesitated. I waited. She pushed the sleeve up. The bruise was on the inside of her forearm, high up, closer to the elbow than the wrist. It was 4 days old at least, fading from purple to green-yellow at the edges. It was not the shape of a fall. I've been a nurse for 40 years and I know what a fall looks like. I sat with her at the kitchen table for 2 hours that morning. I did not tell her what I thought. I asked her questions, careful questions the way I was trained to ask them, without accusation, without pressure, questions that gave her the exits she needed in case she wasn't ready. She answered some of them and didn't answer others. And twice she said, "Mom, it's not what you think." And I said, both times, "Okay." Because whether or not she was ready, I was. Before I left, I asked her if I could take a photo of her arm. She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. I took two. I also took a mental note of something she said, almost in passing as I was putting on my coat. She said, "He took my name off the joint account last month. He said it was easier for taxes." She said it the way you say something you've been told often enough that you've stopped questioning it. I said, "Whose name is the lease in?" She said, "His." I said, "Your car?" She said, "His." I name. It was his car before we married. I said, "Your paycheck, where does it go?" She said, "We have one account now. He manages it." I did not say anything. I put my coat on. I hugged her. I told her I loved her and that she was the best thing I had ever done with my life, and I meant it so completely that she started to cry, and I held her until she stopped. Then I got in my car and I called Constance. What happened next took about 3 weeks, and I'm going to be honest with you, parts of it were very hard to watch. Because there is a thing that happens when you start helping someone leave a situation like this. They go back toward it first. They defend the person who has hurt them. They explain. They minimize. Lily did all of these things. She called me 4 days after my visit and told me she had talked to Conrad and that everything was fine, that they were working on things, that I had misread the situation, that the account change was genuinely about taxes and the bruise was genuinely an accident. I said, "Okay, sweetheart," and I meant it. "Okay, I hear you." But I did not change what I was doing. I had already spoken to Constance at length. I had already had a quiet conversation with Lily's doctor, a woman I had worked with for years, who knew the protocol and knew how to document without triggering anything Lily wasn't ready for. I had already made a call to a colleague at Northside Hospital, who ran their social work and victim advocacy department, and who gave me the name of a counsellor Lily could see without Conrad knowing, someone who accepted her insurance and had an office 20 minutes from Lily's workplace. I had also called Pauline. I want to explain that call because it matters. I did not call Pauline to confront her. I called Pauline because I had been watching her for a year, and I had come to understand that she was not a villain in the way we imagine villains. She was a woman who had grown up in the same house as Conrad, who had learned the same patterns, who had been told her whole life that this was how a marriage worked. The man decides, the woman adjusts. She'd probably never examined that belief long enough to question it. Her divorce, years ago, which Lily had mentioned once, briefly, had never been discussed in front of me, but I suspected it was relevant. When I called her, I said, "Pauline, I'm going to share something with you, and I need you to listen with the best part of yourself." She was quiet, which surprised me. I told her, plainly, that I had concerns about my daughter's safety. I did not say Conrad's name like an accusation. I did not list evidence. I said, "I know you love your brother. I also think you love Lily. And I'm telling you that what is happening in that house is not going to end well for anyone, including him." There was a long silence. And then Pauline said, in a voice that sounded nothing like the woman at the restaurant, "I know." That was all. "I know." And then, softer, "I've been telling myself it wasn't my business." I said, "It is now." She didn't turn against Conrad overnight. That's not the point. The point is that after that call, she stopped reinforcing. She stopped being the second voice that made Lily feel like the problem was Lily. That mattered more than I can explain. The thing about leaving a situation like this is that the woman leaving has to choose it herself, every day, sometimes every hour. You cannot drag someone out. You can build the path, you can clear the debris, you can stand at the other end with your arms open. But the walking is hers to do. Lily walked. It happened on a Sunday evening in late April. She called me from her car, from the parking lot of a Publix near their apartment, and she said, "Mom, I left. I have my work bag and my nursing license and my laptop, and I don't know what else I need." I said, "You need to come here." She said, "He's going to." I said, "I know. Come here first." She stayed in my guest room for 6 days while Constance handled the immediate legal pieces, the protective order, the documentation, the beginning of the process. Conrad called me once. Once. He was calm on the phone. Measured. The same way he was at dinner the night he ordered for my daughter on her birthday. He said he hoped we could handle this like adults. I said, "Conrad, I've been handling this like an adult since March. I'll let my attorney reach out to yours." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You have an attorney?" I said, "I have several, actually. Have a good evening." He did not call me again. Lily is in her own apartment now, in Decatur, a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor with windows that face east, and a kitchen she has been stocking slowly, the way you stock a kitchen when you are learning to want things for yourself again. She went back to working full-time in May. She has been seeing the counselor I found for her, not because I made her, but because one day she called me and said, "I want to understand how I got here, so I never get here again." That is my daughter. That stubbornness I mentioned, it did not go anywhere. It just needed somewhere safe to land. She laughs again. Not the way she used to, not yet. It is a quieter laugh right now, more careful, like something still getting its legs back. But it is real. Last week she called me from the grocery store to tell me she had stood in the cereal aisle for 5 minutes, deciding between 2 kinds of granola, and that it was, she said, genuinely one of the best moments of my recent life. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. I think about the women who don't have someone watching, who don't have a Constance or a hospital colleague, or enough years of training to know what a bruise shaped like that means. I think about them more than I used to. I have started volunteering 2 Saturdays a month at a resource centre in Buckhead. They do legal clinics, safety planning, counselling referrals. I am not saving anyone, but I can tell a woman where the door is. I have learned that is sometimes enough. Here is what I want you to understand. If you are watching this and something in it sounds familiar, not the details but the feeling of adjusting, the feeling of judging, the feeling of checking whether it is safe to have an opinion, the feeling of a person you love going quiet in ways you can't quite name. Trust that feeling. Document what you can. Take the photos. Screenshot the messages. Write down the dates. Keep a record somewhere he cannot find it. Email it to yourself or to someone you trust, the way nurses keep their notes, because the moment you're ready to act, you are going to want the evidence. And evidence does not disappear if you've been careful. You're not imagining it, you are not being too sensitive, and you are not alone. Even if right now it feels like the walls of that house are the only thing in the world. My daughter is okay. We are okay. It took everything I had and I would do it again without thinking twice. That is the only way I know how to love someone. If his story moved you, I would really like to know. Leave a comment and tell me where you are listening from. And if there is someone in your life you are quietly worried about, ask yourself tonight what one small thing you could do. Not everything at once, just one thing. That is how it starts. I have been thinking about what made the difference. Not the legal documents, not the protective order, not even Constance with her 23 years in family law. Those things mattered. They mattered enormously, but they were downstream of something else. The thing that made the difference was paying attention before there was anything obvious to see. That is the part no one talks about. We talk about the moment of crisis, the dramatic confrontation, the escape. We don't talk about the 18 months before that. The Sunday dinners, and the careful phone calls and the drive home where I sat in my own driveway trying to get my face right. The slow, unglamorous work of watching and waiting and building a case that no one had asked me to build, that is where it actually happened. Everything else was just executing on a decision I had already made, quietly, alone, in the dark of my car. Lily used to apologize to me for not seeing it sooner. She would say, "Mom, I should have known," and I would tell her every time that she did know. She knew the way your body knows before your mind catches up. She knew when she put her menu down on that birthday table, like she was setting down something she'd been carrying for years. She knew when she exhaled in that parking lot hug. The knowing was there. What she needed was the time and the safety to trust it, and those are not things you can rush in someone else. Conrad and Pauline did not set out, I think, to be what they became. That is a complicated thing to hold, that people can cause real harm without drawing up a plan to do so. What Conrad had was a set of beliefs about how a marriage should work, beliefs that were never questioned, never challenged, never held up to any light. He believed he was the authority and Lily was the variable, and he arranged their life accordingly, and every time Lily adjusted, and she adjusted so many times, it confirmed for him that the arrangement was correct. That is how it works. Not with malice usually, with assumption, with the slow erosion that happens when one person's comfort is always purchased at the cost of another person's self. Pauline said, "I know," when I called her, and I have thought about those 2 words more than almost anything else in this story. She knew. She had been watching her brother her whole life, and she knew what he was capable of, and she had decided, for reasons I don't entirely fault her for, that it was not her place to say so. What changed her mind was someone looking her in the eye, or the phone equivalent of the eye, and saying, "It is your place now." Sometimes that is all it takes. A person who was already standing near the door just needs someone to tell them it's unlocked. Lily is building herself back. It is not fast, and it is not linear, and there are days she calls me that are harder than others. But she is doing it with her eyes open, which is the only way it sticks. Resilience is not something that happens to you. It is something you practice, badly at first and then better. And then one day you are standing in a grocery store aisle, choosing between 2 kinds of granola, and that choice, that small, inconsequential, completely yours choice, feels like the most important thing you have done in years. That is what I want to leave you with. Not the legal strategy, not the documentation, not the network of professionals I was fortunate enough to know. Those things are real, and they matter, and I will always be grateful for them. But the foundation underneath all of it was simpler than that. I paid attention. I trusted what I saw. I did not let anyone, including my own desire to believe everything was fine, talk me out of what I knew. If you are watching this and something in it is landing a little too close, trust that. That feeling is information. It is not being too sensitive. It is not making something out of nothing. It is you knowing what you know. Write it down. Date it. Keep it somewhere safe. That is where it starts.